It's time to fire up the studio and put another plugin to the test. Today I will be featuring DIFIX from United Plugins. Will it become a fixture or get nixed? Find out next in Plug In, Plug Out. Hey there, I'm Dan, the Lonely Rocker. Welcome to Plug In, Plug Out. This is the series where I take a look at a plugin, put it through its paces, and decide if it's something I'm going to keep or toss out. Today I've got a plugin from United Plugins and their sound device digital team. We're going to be looking at DIFIX, or is it pronounced DIFIX? Well, if it does what it promises to do, it might just be the fix I'm looking for. DIFIX is your virtual DI box. Now in my studio, it's no secret that I love a good tube amp, and I have a process for getting my guitars in. But actually when I'm recording clean guitars, I tend to like to go direct if I want that really chimey clean sound, and I don't want any tube distortion that tends to creep in sometimes when I don't want it to. There's always a reason that you're going to want to record a guitar directly, and bass guitar especially. I do record bass directly. I go through a preamp sometimes, but sometimes I'm just doing quick and dirty and I want to get into the system real quick, and I go right into the interface. Now, some interfaces have what's called a high Z or high impedance input, and that's designed for guitars and basses to go on direct. But sometimes the interfaces are just not up to the task, and the signals we get are just not good enough and don't create that foundation we need to create good mixes. So DIFIX is designed to help us in those situations. It's actually a multi-band dynamic processor under the hood, but on the surface and with a very simple UI, it's basically a DI box that gives you three simple features to enhance the signal. Well, really to understand what it does is let's just get our hands on it, and I'll walk through the features of the plugin. All right, let's do a little walk through the plugin. It's not going to take very long because there's really not much here to see. There's 3 dials, there's an on-off switch, and you can choose between a bass DI and a guitar DI. So I don't think we're going to have to read the manual on this one. So let's start here. You've got an input, you've got an output, you've got an intensity, which I assume is the core of the algorithm and the dynamics processing. And whether or not you're using a guitar or a bass, well, you've got a switch. I think if I had a test right now, you might get 100%. Really not a lot to it. So what I've done here, I've got a bass track that was recorded. It's finger picked. It's kind of dull. I forgot to turn up the pots on the pickup, so it's a little bit quiet, and there's just not a lot going on there. So let's take a listen to it with the plugin and bypass. So if I would match that up with the drums, it's kind of getting buried. So let me just play around with it a little bit and just to see what this can do with this bass guitar. Let's take a listen. Well, the first thing you notice, it's not bringing up a lot of noise. That's something that I thought might happen because if I'm sort of manufacturing something that's not there, it's just going to bring up the noise floor. But it's still pretty clean, assuming my recording is not that bad, but it is bringing a lot of life to the bass. Let me play the drums alongside the bass, because that will really kind of show what this plugin is doing. By the way, before I get those haters telling me that the plugins are not level, it's got to be the same volume when it's on or it's off. The whole purpose of this plugin is actually to give you some signal when you don't have any. So yes, it is getting louder. That's part of what it's doing. But I don't hear any extra noise coming in, and actually some nice saturation is coming into the signal. So really not much else to show. There's, I don't know if you can do anything. Yeah, nothing seems to be happening. I tried to plug in my bass guitar right here and I put a hole in my screen, so don't try that. Anyways, I did prepare some other audio samples, so let's run through those so you can get a better idea what DIFX does. Okay, let's look at a couple examples. Before I forget, I didn't mention that the power switch on and on that's built into the plugin, not the one that you would use as part of your DAW, but there's an on-off switch here inside the plugin. The plugin's designed, when you turn that thing on and off, it doesn't click. A lot of plugins do that when you turn it off. And that's great because if you actually want to keyframe it on or off, if you're using some automation, you're not going to get any unwanted pops when the plugin turns off. So that's a feature that I forgot to mention that I should have earlier. All right, so in this example, I've got a bass guitar, much like the example we heard in the opening, where the level of the recording was just insufficient. So I've jacked up the input almost all the way up here, and I've backed off on the output. So I was just trying to get some distortion, because that's something that I noticed that the plugin does add some roundness and a nice warm distortion to the signal. And I've got the intensity about 3/4 of the way up. Let's take a listen. All right, in this next example, I want to take a look at the guitar. I want to show it to you in context of the mix because I really think that's where this plugin really shines. In this case, the guitar's level is really low, and I really need to give it a boost. And that little extra saturation goes a long way in just improving the tonal character of that guitar. Now, I've got a level meter here, so we're going to see that there's a lot of level coming into the signal, but I'm not going like well beyond zero. It's still well within reasonable levels, but it's definitely giving us a good boost to that signal to really help it sit better in the mix. Let's take a listen. In this last example, I brought some friends to the party. Now, a DI plugin on its own is not going to get your signal to completion, but it's certainly going to make every other plugin in the chain sound that much better once you have that nice fat signal. The Royal compressor by the same team that develops DIFX, it's a great Varimu compressor. I thought it would pair really nicely with this plugin. Plus, I put some EQ, a little reverb on the guitar, created a little plugin chain for the bass and the guitar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the track. I'm going to take DIFX off. All the other plugins will still be in the chain, and then I'll engage DIFX just so you can hear it in context of some other plugins. Let's take a listen. the verdict is in. Is DIFIX that I was looking for, or we're going to toss it out? Well, let me give you some thoughts on the plugin before I let you know that. You know what? It's a very, very useful plugin. I found that on the tracks that I use, and I played around with it after the shots that I did for this video, and it comes as advertised. You know, I know some haters out there are going to say, oh, you're just making it louder, no big deal. But there's a lot more to it under the hood. It's not bringing up a lot of noise. It's definitely fattening up the signal. I keep thinking about a piece of Swiss cheese. You know, it's filling the holes with really good cheese and not just filler. It's doing its job, fattening up the signal, giving a lot more to work with, and setting it up for further processing down the chain on each one of your tracks. So definitely a very useful tool if you're using an interface that's subpar, or perhaps you're resurrecting an old mix where you've got some tracks that just aren't cutting it. Something like this could go a long way to repairing those tracks and preparing them for a better mix. If I was to look at the con side, it is a very simple plugin, and I understand DI boxes are very simple devices. I've got one here, and there's no level meters or things like that on there, but we are in the digital realm, and having a little meter on there, something would go a long way. I mean, this will definitely be used as a gain stage in your mix. It would be good to see the levels coming into the plugin and going out without having to use another level meter. That's something I would like to see on the plugin. And one thing that I know United Plugins does on a lot of their plugins, they'll add things like a high pass and a low pass filter. You know, if you're just something to help you really prep that track so it's ready to go for the next stages of processing. That's not a deal breaker, but something that I'd like to see on such a simple plugin, because it is a really simple plugin at that. But the dynamics processing is really clever, and bottom line, it sounds really good. When I try a piece of gear, a piece of software, if it inspires me, well, it's definitely a keeper in my books. And DIFIX definitely inspired me when I plugged it in. I was messing around with it. That little jam came out simply from messing around with the plugin. So for that reason alone, we're definitely going to be keeping it around. Now, United Plugins does offer free trials on all of their plugins, so I'll put a link in the description below so you can get a copy for yourself. And if you check it out, just let me know about it in the comments. And this little inspiration, I'm going to roll with it. Have some fun. I'll see you in the next video. Well, if you like this video, nothing says thank you more than hitting that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it encourages me to make more content. Certainly you can hit the like button and ring that notification bell so you can stay up to date with everything that I'm doing. If you really want to support this channel, I am on Patreon. Links to everything that I discuss, well, I put them in the description below. And most importantly, I hope I'll see you again in another video.